Greetings from India. My topic is the pandemic, lessons from the past, and the need to remember our loss. India was home to many epidemics like leprosy, tuberculosis, cholera, smallpox, diphtheria, and fever outbreaks. While cholera, malaria, influenza, diarrhea, dysentery, etc., had been regular visitors in the Fiji Islands. I will talk about the missionaries' activities in both colonies before moving on to the Spanish flu, attitude of the British government, and the need to remember our loss. The Charter Act of 1813 did not favor missionaries. After 1857, scores of missionaries entered India. The missionaries excelled in their healing missions. They set up educational institutions, dispensaries, asylums, sanatoriums, and hospitals all over India. Many missionary doctors were awarded the Kaiser-i-Hind Medal for their selfless service and devotion during the plague and epidemic outbreaks. The 1896 plague came via a ship from Hong Kong. Initially, the government kept the city port open for business and underplayed the severity of the plague. The disease spread like wildfire in the tightly packed slums of Bombay. The children amused themselves by throwing dead rats in the gullies. Nearly 12 million died. The merchant class of Banyas were opposed to the killing of rats for religious reasons. Haskin was asked to make a plague vaccine. By the end of January 1897, thousands had been inoculated. In the meantime, the Epidemic Disease Act of 1897 was drafted and put into effect. Stringent measures were adopted by the government, which included house-to-house visitation by plague medical officers, inspection of the corpses, village inspection, segregation camps, and segregation at the hospital level. The people were forced to undergo medical inspection. Infected clothing was burnt, and patients were given a disinfectant bath in wooden tubs. The most effective method against the plague was complete evacuation. The British took over Fiji in 1874, but the missionaries had already arrived in 1835 with the sole purpose of proselytization. The people were known to be savages, and it was left to the missionaries to tame them. By 1860, there was complete conversion of all the islanders, even if only in name. The missionaries looked for holistic development by opening many schools for the local population and providing them with Western education so that they could become economically self-reliant. For example, the Ballantine School was the dream of Miss Mary Ballantyne for the welfare and uplift of the girls of Italki. Reverend William Slade was the first missionary to arrive in 1896 in Nyalaga and open the Montevelos Girls' School and the Buniviti Boys' School. Reverend Lorimer Fisher and Reverend John Weir Burton were concerned with the working conditions and the treatment of the islanders, and also the indentured labor from India and other colonies. Burton's book, The Fiji of Today, published in 1910, acquainted C.F. Andrews about the plight of indentured labor in Fiji before his visit in 1917. In January 1875, Chief Kakabau and party returned from Sydney via the warship HMS Dido. He and his son got infected with measles. Since no quarantine procedures had been established in Fiji, the king was welcomed by a large number of Fijians. Human contact helped spread the epidemic and wiped out 140,000 people in Fiji, along with the Wesleyan Church ministers, 9 native ministers, and 200 catechists. This was followed by whooping cough, dengue, fever, and dysentery in the coming years. Missionary supplies of food and medicine were shared with some help from local traders. The buildings that housed the ailing colonists were burnt. Methodist missionary George Brown and his wife Lydia cared for many of the ailing people during many epidemics while suffering grave personal loss. 2 of their children died 5 months apart in an epidemic in 1879. Governor George O'Brien asked the Catholic and Wesleyan missionaries to start a hygiene mission in Fiji. Influenza was the only pandemic to originate in the West and spread eastwards. Being highly contagious, it spread through the troops returning from war in ships, who passed on the infection to the rest of the population via railroads and human contact. There was a shortage of doctors as they were tending to the soldiers wounded at war. The Spanish flu in India. Initially, it was called the Bombay fever. The first cases were found among the sepoys on the docks at duty, and they were admitted to the hospital on 10th June 1918. By 24th June, the fever spread like wildfire all over Bombay, which was an overcrowded industrial area with a large working class population living in poorly ventilated one-room halls, sans proper sanitary conditions. Symptoms included pain in the limbs and bones, bronchial inflammation, pain and soreness in eyes. The largest mortality was among the low-class Hindus aged 25 to 40 years, especially the women. The reasons for high mortality rates were poverty, illiteracy, superstition, cramped and unhygienic living conditions. The health officer, John Andrew Turner, appealed to the people of Mumbai, saying that the ignorance and superstition of the people, their different social surroundings and modes of life made it difficult for the authorities to check the spread of the disease. Lack of proper food and medical care made the industrial workers easy prey. The government recommended quarantine, opening up of ill-ventilated buildings, disinfection of clothing, sanitization drives, and evacuation. Among the famous personalities infected in India were Mahatma Gandhi, Charles Trier Andrews, Munshi Premchand, and the poet Nirala. Relief efforts were carried out through the length and breadth of India by Christian missionaries and other secular organizations like the Social Service League, Indian Red Cross, and the Salvation Army. The attitude of the British. As the famine was raging across the United Provinces, the Lieutenant Governor Harcourt Butler spoke about the famine and the rising prices, but failed to mention the plague of 1819 in his province, despite a mortality rate of 2 million. The disease came from Auckland via steamship Talloon to Fiji, Western Samoa, and Tonga. The chief medical officer, G.W.A. Lynch, examined many crew members ailing with the flu. He, along with Dr. Paley, came to the conclusion that there was nothing serious about the cases and the people were allowed to disembark at Suva on 4th November 1918. The death of 6 Fijians and 7 stevedores forced the administration to finally acknowledge the presence of the epidemic on 18th November 1918. It came to be known as the Badi Bimari in Fiji. The region of American Samoa suffered no deaths due to strict quarantine practice. But in Western Samoa, no quarantine practices were imposed as none had been received by Colonel Robert Logan as instructions. It was called the Famine in Samoa. The only doctor in Tonga had gone to collect medical supplies in Fiji. He stayed on to assist in Fiji, unaware that the Tonga too was infected. The response by the government. The nursing skills of the Europeans were welcomed, though besides quarantine, quinine, and Epsom salt, there was little to offer. In Fiji, gargling with hot water and salt was advised, with an emphasis on cleanliness. European food was thought to be better in terms of its recuperative power, emphasizing European food supremacy. The government's answer to influenza was quarantine, bed rest, and aspirin for fever, but neither claimed nor guaranteed survival. Masks were offered only to the Europeans and inhalations to European and Indian laborers on select plantations. The troops were lauded for their heroic work of maintaining law and order. Spanish flu mortality rate. According to a 2012 study, nearly 14 million died of the flu in India. The burning ghats and burial grounds were literally swamped with corpses, while an even greater number awaited removal. In Salvador do Mundo, village of Goa, there was no place in the cemetery to bury the dead, so they just dumped the bodies on the hill nearby. This huge pile of skeleton and bones was extremely distressing for the residents. They collected funds from their clubs and built a cross at the site as a mark of respect to the dead. 5% of the Fijian population had been wiped out. 47% of the leaders of the London Missionary Society and 65 catechists lost their lives. 22% of the population of Western Samoa, and 8% of the people of Tonga succumbed to the flu. Lessons learned from the past. Until 1918, public health was taken care of by medical officers of health, the Board of Education, and many other temporary bodies. This may be the reason for the uneven countermeasures adopted by the health officers in different parts of Britain and its colonies. The Ministry of Health came into existence in Britain as a response to the influenza pandemic in 1919. There were no testing facilities, and death figures were collected from local newspapers. The study of virology was in a nascent stage, and influenza was not a notifiable disease. The absence of vaccines and proper medical facilities left quarantine as the best chance for survival. People wore masks, and there was an emphasis on cleanliness and hygiene. The importance of a funeral. According to a study, the organization of the period surrounding the funeral was important to process the loss. A good funeral helps all the people involved in the preparations to look back with satisfaction that they put in their best in the last journey of the loved one. An old structure was to be removed to widen the road outside the cemetery in Rai village in South Goa. But in October 2020, people began flocking to it, praying for the well-being of their loved ones recovering from COVID-19. This structure was actually built to mark the mass burial site for villagers who died in the Spanish flu 100 years ago. Now this structure has been restored to its former glory. In the case of the Pacific Islands and the Samoans, infected bodies were dumped in mass graves. This kind of burial was particularly soul-destroying, as there was no acknowledgement of who the dead were, and to be buried without identification went against custom and culture. Some memorials for Spanish flu. A plaque to mark the 8,500 deaths in Samoa was erected by the New Zealand government in 1930, and a Maori memorial came up in 1920. These are some of the other memorials in New Zealand, and there is one in the United States also. Carrying the past to the present. On 6 November 2019, the 1918 influenza pandemic memorial plaque was unveiled. The second plaque reads, "This disaster shaped modern approaches to managing infectious diseases, helping to protect future generations." A memorial site not only offers people space to pay homage and relive past memories, but also serves as a reminder for future generations that pandemics get recurring. It offers many learning experiences for the people and the state for the future. Public memorials reflect the psychological and sociological requirements of societies at large. These requirements include human rights, representing the victims, social commemoration rituals for the victims, and, importantly, preserving history. It carries the past to the present and increases the cultural richness of the society. The failure of most governments to commemorate the Spanish flu pandemic silenced the deaths of millions of people, many of whom must have been disproportionately impacted by virtue of their gender or socio-economic status. Thank you.